Three.
Hello, my name is Giulietta. I am founder of Liberated Goddess, where I help sensitive and soulful beings to break free from self-doubt and self-judgment and move into a life that feels authentic and pleasurable and beautiful and joyful. And I am here today with Liz in our part two of our series from therapist to priestess. If you have not checked out part one, please go to Liz's channel, Creating Inner Beauty, where you can kind of see the first video in our series. And in that video, we really did a deep dive into our own journeys of moving into this priestess role, of our initiations into the underworld, of how we felt called to come into the goddess and what that means in our lives. And today we're going to do much more of a deep dive into the term priestess, what that journey has been to move from therapist to priestess, and also give you some suggestions and some tips if you're feeling the call of the goddess, if you're feeling the call of moving into that priestess role in your life. And I'd love to have Liz introduce yourself, and then we can kind of jump in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julietta, for having me on. I'm so excited to be doing this video series with you. Hi, guys. My name is Liz, and I'm an intuitive coach and healer. And my practice and my channel is called Creating Inner Beauty. And in my work, I really love helping women heal their blocks, step into their unique power and intuitive gifts, and create soul-fulfilling lives that they love. And one of the ways I really love doing that is by connecting to goddess energy, hosting goddess circles and goddess rituals, and really just helping women step into their own divine feminine power. And really, when I'm holding those spaces, I really resonate with the term priestess. So I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about today.
I love that. And yeah, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear what does the term priestess mean to you and how you really came to come into your priestess self?
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to explore that a little bit more. I was thinking about that before this call and why the term priestess feels so right at this point in my journey, at this point in my life. And I think it's the way that I think about being a priestess is partially about being able to hold a loving space and also to be able to bring forward the energy of the divine. And for me, that's very much goddess energy. But I think that that can also be holding the space for the energy of the universe, for creative energy, for source energy, however you consider that divine energy, being able to let that flow through you in the work that you're doing in kind of a broader type of way. There's actually a video by another creator that I recently listened to and watched, and her name is Ruby Wolf, and she defined the term priestess and talked about the priestess having three different offices. And I just wanted to take a moment to share this definition because it just resonated with me so much when I heard it, and I thought it might be helpful for other people. And when she talked about the term priestess, she talked about the having the three parts, one being invocation, which is basically calling forward the divine energy, whether that be a specific deity, like a specific goddess, like Isis or Aphrodite, or just the divine parts of ourselves. Then there's transmission, so embodying that energy, either whatever energies that we feel are connected to our divine selves or the goddesses that we are connecting to, and bringing them forward into the world, sometimes in formal ways, like channeling them during ritual. But also just in living our lives and moving throughout the day, holding on to those energies. And then sacred service, bringing that forward in a way that is going to help community and help the collective. And so when I heard that definition, having those three parts, I was like, Yes, I think that is really how I would personally define priestess, and what I endeavor to do in my everyday, but also in my work. Like really hold that energy, move through it throughout the day, even when I'm just in my house. Like holding the idea that we can create a spiritual space through our daily rituals, and then sharing that with other people. I'm really curious how you define it as well, Giulietta.
Yeah, I love that. So beautiful. And it's so interesting that, you and I kind of connected when I was really getting closer and closer to launching Liberated Goddess. And I was kind of struggling with what do I even call what I'm wanting to offer people. It was intuitive healer and goddess coach, and those felt like those were touching on elements of what I was offering. And then you mentioned that you had been really connecting with this term priestess, and I kind of had this aha moment as we talked and as I did a deep dive into priestess and also the history of the priestess and how priestesses were such a huge part of our human experience across so many cultures. Thousands of years, the priestesses were those who helped to be a conduit between that sacredness and that universal energy and this human experience that we're living, and help to facilitate healing and rituals, and really were the ones that held sacred space. And that just felt so right. And also such a beautiful time in the world right now to reclaim that title and come into that. And so when I think of being a priestess, it is holding both sides.
Mm,
Like you said, in our daily life, how do we live in alignment with spirit, goddess, whatever we want to call it? How do we use our own initiations into the underworld, our own experiences to transform and to help others? I view that role of priestess as helping other people plug into that beautiful divine energy as well. That I'm here with you and I want to help bring that energy so that you can feel that and you can tap into your own wisdom and goddess self and all of those pieces. And so I really view priestess as walking the walk and also helping other people to tap into their own inherent wisdom and really reclaiming all of this deep wisdom that I think we've had in humanity for so many years that it's time to kind of step into as well, even deeper.
mm. Oh, I love that so much. And I really feel like there's a perspective there of seeing each person as their own healer and
Yeah.
their own channel of the divine, and
Mhm.
then being able to just support them in that and help them step forward into that. I think that's so beautiful.
Absolutely. That's something I really love about this approach is it's not saying, "Oh, I have all the answers and you just to follow me." It's you've got this. You've got the wisdom. You've got everything you need. Let's just tap into that and build that. And I think that's such an empowering, such an important approach, especially, I think sometimes we've lost connection with our own intuition or wisdom or our own sense of sacredness. And it can be just such a beautiful transformative experience to help others to collectively move into that energy.
Mhm, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit about this whole series is from therapist to priestess and how you knew that it was time to shift from that identity as a therapist, that work as a therapist, into stepping into yourself as priestess.
Hmm. It's a great question. So I had a little bit of a circuitous, I don't know if I'm saying that word correctly, but a spiraling journey
Yes.
with that for myself. I practiced as a traditional therapist for about 10, 11 years. Um, which I loved doing, but I worked with a very intense caseload. And by the end of my time of that phase of my life, I was getting pretty burnt out, drained, overwhelmed. And so I actually took a pivot, not directly into intuitive work, goddess work, the work that I'm doing now. I put a pause there and moved into another love that I have, which is wellness and fitness. And I opened up my own small business, an exercise studio, and I did that work for about 10 years. So it was very like physically like focused but embodied, and helping women feel really empowered with their own strength and creating like a supportive wellness community. So I see it as part of this larger journey, even though doesn't have the label of being spiritual in nature specifically. But then I did that for about 10 years for whatever reason, and my cycles go in about 10-year cycles. Um, as I was, starting to feel like my time doing that was coming to completion, I had simultaneously been working on my intuitive skills and stepping into my power, doing my own healing, my own work with the goddesses. And so as I was transitioning out of that, um, this is where I kind of came to, okay, what I think I want to do next is move into this intuitive healer and coaching role. And as I began doing that, I yet still felt, when we talked about this a little bit in the last video, that pull from the goddesses and that little whisper of like, this is the direction to go in as well. So I had the opportunity to start hosting my own goddess circles. And once I started doing that, there was just like a rightness that settled into that, and knowing that that had to be part of my work. And then the more I do that work, the more the term priestess resonated with me. So I consider myself holding that priestess space or that priestess title when I'm doing goddess related work, but also when I'm doing work that's not specifically focused on the goddess energy, but is holding space for my clients to feel empowered. I also see it in that way. So it kind of has two sides for me, I guess, but it really kind of came together when I was able to um, do work that incorporated spirituality and talking more in detail about goddesses and goddess energy.
Makes so much sense. And hearing about your journey, I feel like you've always been a priestess, whether that was holding space for clients as a therapist or, for women coming into their bodies. There's always been this energy there. It's just
Mhm.
kind of following and stepping into that path and saying, okay, this is me. And now I'm full blown going into spirit.
Absolutely. I
Um,
definitely
yeah,
know that. I won't lie. When I was a regular therapist, I would think about myself as a priestess, but I would never dare say that to anybody. But now I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to own it. Like, there's a reason for that. And there's such a beautiful tradition over thousands of years of women holding this space as priestess. Like, why would I deny myself that title?
amazing. And really, when you think of the field of therapy, I know we kind of have our more modern view, but really the healing work was by priestesses
Mhm.
back in the day. And so,
Absolutely.
I think there is those roots that sometimes we don't connect with, but really have been there throughout history as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. How about you,
Totally.
Julietta? What
Yeah.
can you tell us about that?
So it's so interesting. Our timelines are quite similar. So at this point, I've been a therapist about 12 years, and this is really when I'm stepping into my priestess self. So there's something about the 10-ish year mark.
Uh-huh.
And it's been an interesting journey. Similarly to our last video, I talked about how my journey with the goddess, with spirituality, has been very cyclical, where I'll deep dive into it and then, nope, I don't want to be judged. I want to fit in. I'm going to push that side. I'm going to go the traditional path. And that's been really my work as a therapist as well. I wanted to be a therapist since I was a teenager. When I had my kind of intense initiation into the underworld at 17, that was the catalyst of I'm going to be a therapist. I'm making meaning of everything I've been through. That felt like my life calling. I never thought I would do anything else but be a therapist. That was it for me. And then once I hit grad school, something felt off. And that was a kind of a hard thing to hold. I loved my work with clients. And similarly to you, a lot of crisis and trauma was kind of drawn to me and kind of the work that I had done with clients over the years. And so it was very, very deep underworld work. And I would go through periods of time where, okay, this is it. I'm a therapist, I'm owning it, or maybe I'm just in burnout. But there was this existential crisis every few years that I would get into of I feel like something's missing. And it took me a long time to really listen to that intuition that I'm meant to do spirit work,
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
I'm still a therapist currently. I've pivoted to focusing on sex and couples therapy, and that feels really beautiful. That feels right for me to have that side. And for a long period of time, I was thinking, can I integrate some of my archetypal work into it? Can I do this? It just never quite felt right. And I recognize that for me, I there's this whole other realm that I needed to work with people in.
Hmm.
I would have after work sometimes, I would have these images that would pop into my head of me whipping out an oracle card or doing an intuitive reading or doing goddess work with somebody. It was just this super intense intuitive messages that I would get. And then in my personal life, the goddess would just keep showing up everywhere.
Hmm.
And I think eventually, once I kind of also went through infertility and my life just felt like I did everything right. I followed the traditional path. Why is life not being the way I wanted it to
Huh,
be?
why is it
And
not
it,
all together? Hmm.
yeah, and everything just kind of got stripped away in those moments. And I had to get really clear on what is my meaning in life? What is my purpose in life? Why am I here? What am I doing? And that's where I got so clear that I was meant to follow this priestess path and step out of the box, even if maybe there was some judgment, even if it wasn't that secure traditional path and the status of having a license and all of those pieces that I was kind of working through. And over those years, I really came into this is it. This is
Hmm.
all these years, this is what's been calling to me. And I'm finally listening and doing
Hmm.
it. And it feels so right. And I think such a different level of healing that I can offer as well.
Hmm. Hmm. I love your bravery in stepping forward into that. And it kind of made me think about, in my own healing
Yeah.
experiences, how powerful. I mean, of course, therapy has always been powerful, and I wholeheartedly believe in it.
Mhm.
But when I was in my own healing journey, I layered on it all kinds of spiritual and
Yeah.
energetic healing, and I felt like it just helped the process so much more. And so I think it sounds like we've both sort of had this experience where we've deeply felt drawn to therapy, but then we've
Mhm.
also seen how there can be more and more healing available to people.
That is so true. When I think about my own healing journey, I love therapy. I'm still in therapy. I see a therapist, but always my biggest changes has been when I was doing additional spiritual and particularly goddess work in the background.
Mhm.
All of my biggest transformations have been when I incorporated that element. Even in my own therapy right now, I bring in all my goddess work to my therapist and talk about, this journey. I just have felt that is what I have needed personally in my own healing. There was something missing, even in my own journey. And so I think that everything that you said just resonates so much for me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm totally feeling what you're saying as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear if other people are going to also have that same experience.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear from others. And I have also noticed that the deeper I've gone on this path, the more I think you and I've talked about this, the more we're also drawing people to us that
Yeah.
are sharing that they have been therapists and have followed that traditional path and are really, they know intuitively and deeply that there is something else, something additional that they need to offer, but it's hard. It's hard to break free. It's hard to move out of that safety of that role and that traditional path as well.
Mhm. Mhm. I think there's can be, I know I've definitely struggled with this, just, worry about reactions from other
Yeah.
people and what labels that, might come at you
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. So I think there's very much a journey that needs to happen or can need to happen in moving toward a more priestess path.
Definitely. And I think that's part of the priestess path is how do we step into our own voice and
Mhm.
be seen and work through those scary messages of what if I'm judged or different or whatever that might be. And being able to support others on that journey as well, I think can be really powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you've been on the priestess path officially, for longer than me. You've been doing goddess circles. You've been really stepping into this. I'd love to hear what does that look like in your practice? how do you share that wisdom? How do you help others tap into their own inner priestess, inner goddess selves, and kind of what that tangibly looks like? And where do you want to go from here as a priestess as well?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it. That will help me, figure out where I'm going to.
Yeah.
So I think that as I mentioned earlier, the biggest place where I feel like I inhabit that priestess role has been in offering monthly goddess circles in my local area. And so these are basically just experiences where I pick a theme and a connected goddess, and the group of women that gathers together for each month, we talk about this goddess in on a variety of levels, right? I talk about the mythology and the story and the archetype of the goddess, but we also go into some ritual practices as well as a healing meditation where with the goddess energy that I've been calling in, or that the group calls in together in sacred circle, so that each individual woman has her own lived experience with that goddess energy. And so I basically facilitate that space for women. And it's been so beautiful to watch. I find that a range of women come to the circles. Some are not that. Like they haven't really started specifically a goddess journey, but are drawn to the topic. And then when they start learning about like the goddesses connected to that, like I just kind of see them light up and feel like a little bit more empowered. Other women have been working with goddess energy for a long time, but they sort of do it on their own. And then when they come into circle and we're able to have discussions and support one another, that feels really supportive and rewarding for them. So just kind of seeing that process unfold has been really beautiful and really cemented to me like, yes, this is something that I've meant to do. And every time we have a circle, one of the things, this kind of harkens back to something you said earlier, Julietta, about our own wisdom that comes up. One of the things that I'm just always so wowed by is the women supporting one another and sharing the wisdom that they've gathered through their own life experience or the intuitive downloads they're getting as part of the circle. And it's just so like beautiful to watch that process unfold, and why that's part of why I think it's also so powerful to do healing in this kind of way, in more of a ritual space with a circle of other people, because there's so much, wisdom that we can all bring together and energy we can raise. So I think that that can be very powerful. Um, and recently I also ended up hosting, it was it wasn't something I planned to do, but I was holding a 6-week workshop, and one of the women couldn't attend the first circle of the workshop. And so I offered to do a personalized workshop for her. So we met for a goddess circle, but it was just one-on-one. And it was so beautiful. I definitely want to do more of that. So it was just kind of taking that similar concept of bringing in, invoking the goddess energy, talking about the mythology, the history around it, but also the lessons and the wisdom the goddess had for this particular individual, and then doing ritual together and going into meditation and healing together. And it was just a really beautiful experience. So that's another way that I foresee myself doing that in the future. And then kind of you asked like, where do I see myself going with this? I have sort of this inkling of an idea of bringing together, in my head, I'm calling it a women's wisdom circle. And it's kind of based on this concept of watching the women in my like formal goddess circles just support each other so beautifully and tap into their own inner wisdom. So I'm really looking toward um, moving toward facilitating circles where I can continue to bring in the goddess energy, but also help other women support one another in that space.
I love that. There's something so powerful about, yeah, just connecting with other women on this path. I mean, that's how you and I connected initially, was also in a goddess circles and goddess program, and I'm really feeling like there's this huge collective piece to what you're talking about, of really this healing of women coming together and just sharing in this collective wisdom, which I think we don't get enough opportunities to do in our daily lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just feels like such like a this like pause of like the
Mm-hmm.
mundane life and
Yeah.
this place of like magic and sacredness when you can
Mm-hmm.
come together and do it, I feel.
Yeah, which I think a lot of us are feeling called to go into so deeply right now, is just this sense of sacredness and safety and softness, and being able to feel held in a space where we can really be ourselves and really support and hold other people and other women. And it just can feel so like such a corrective experience and such a healing experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's so interesting as I feel like there's so many parallels to our journeys.
I'm sure there's
Um,
no coincidence we've been brought together.
yes, definitely. So as I've kind of talked about, this is something that I'm just launching, is Liberated Goddess, and I currently am going to be offering a number of goddess individual sessions. I've kind of broken it down to sensual goddess sessions, sessions for women experiencing infertility or trying to integrate motherhood, how to connect with your own empowerment, your own wisdom, priestess goddess sessions. So kind of just ways to help support bringing in goddess energy, bringing in these specific goddesses, and getting clarity on our own intuition, our own wisdom. I think sometimes we can get so much mental chatter and so many messages, and so a way to kind of just deepen into our own goddess selves and kind of use meditations and guided imagery and ritual for that. And then I also feel really called to also do circles and to build community. I think there is something so powerful about community. I think the individual work is beautiful, and I think that there is something about feeling seen and received and held by others and feeling safe to be our authentic goddessy selves, which is just such a beautiful experience. And so I'm also feeling drawn to work towards building a community of sensitive, soft, beautifully supportive women and circles, just to really, so everyone can feel held in this journey and not isolated and alone, which I think it can feel very lonely sometimes when we're drawn to this path and we don't have maybe a circle or a community of people who are also on a similar journey.
Beautiful. I can't wait to participate.
I'm so excited about that. And yeah, I think, if it feels okay for you, I'd like to move on to kind of the final section of our video today, where we kind of give some brief tips for anybody who feels called to the priestess path and who might be hearing that call or feeling those rumblings, kind of as we have, of maybe there's something I need to be doing different or adding, or just kind of part of me that needs to just embrace it and go there. Yeah.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Mhm.
So and I know we're going to really do a much deeper dive into this in our last video of the series, but I would love to hear kind of if there's any suggestions or any wisdom that you could share for women who feel called to follow the priestess path, or for therapists that are starting to feel this call towards the priestess path.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to me is to trust it. You know, if you've been watching this video and you've made it this far into this video, you're probably being called to the goddess path and to a priestess path. So I would say trust the nudge that you are getting, that and to know that there are other women and other therapists out there who feel the same way and who are on similar paths, and to start to look for those resources, look for books where you could learn more about the goddesses and about priestessing, look for communities. Try to connect with others. I feel like I wish I had done, I think, more of that early on. I think I would have felt more centered in this role and this experience earlier on in my journey if I had let myself explore a little bit more. So I think that that is definitely part of it. And then I think for me, the other part is integrating goddess ritual into your daily life in small ways. Like, I love starting my day in a very intentional, sacred way at my goddess altar, spending time in meditation with the goddesses. I also love to use goddess oracle cards, and that's something I love to do with my clients as well, channeling that energy of the goddess through messages in that way, just starting to do those practices for yourself and then seeing where they take you, like listening to the intuitive guidance that comes through in that way, because your soul knows the journey. You just need to kind of listen to it. That those would be the first things that come to my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I so hear you as far as kind of wishing at the beginning of this journey that there had been a little bit more. I know for me, I just the goddess was here the whole time and I was like, no, I'm not going there. I'm following the traditional path. And so I would say if you for anybody who's watching this, for anybody who is feeling this is resonating for you, there is a deep inner knowing that is calling you. And I think that sometimes you don't even need to do anything with it at this moment, but just start to listen to those messages and be receptive to what is this maybe existential feeling that's showing up, or what are these intuitive downloads that you're getting, and starting to just kind of make space to get to know your own path and your own wisdom. I think that it can feel really easy to kind of force ourselves to go in little boxes of this is the only thing I can do, or I need to make it go this way. But I think so much wisdom gets lost in those moments when we do that. Similarly, community has been huge. As a therapist, I really isolated myself a lot from, I think, other therapists or therapy communities because I felt so different inside. I felt very much afraid of judgment. I think there can be a little bit of that element in certain therapist communities. There can be a little bit of a judgment for therapists that walk their own path, or therapists that are a little bit more in the spiritual realm, or who transition to coaching.
Mhm.
So I think there can be a lot of those internalized fear messages and shame messages. And so I want to name all of that because I think that can very much be there. And I think to explore that and look at that and have compassion for that is huge. And to also find other people who are walking this path that can hold a mirror to you. I know when I've connected with, I kind of created a local witchy therapist group listserv, and I've been hearing about all of these therapist offerings or meeting other therapists that are doing more spiritual offerings on the side. And I was so inspired. I mean, I was so inspired by your story as well. And so the more that I connect with therapists that are doing it, the more happy I feel and joyful. And I have no judgment for that. And so it's
Mhm.
helped me have a lot more compassion and sweetness and softness for myself and wanting to step outside of that box and build a supportive community of other therapists, kind of similar to building goddess circles and community of that I think we need community on this path. And so I really encourage anybody who's feeling this call to find community, find people that you feel safe with and that you felt like you can be yourself with, and listen to that intuition and that part of you that's calling you. Just get to know that part of yourself a little bit more.
Make friends with it.
Yes. And, there's so much there in the joy of breaking free of it, but also just in being able to face maybe the fears or the worries or the shame or all those other pieces that we hold. There's something really beautiful about being able to sit with that and
Mhm.
honor that and kind of work through that, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's so beautifully said.
Yes, absolutely. And so before I kind of dive into what our next video would be, I just wanted to open it up and see if there's anything else you feel like you wanted to share. Um,
Um, I guess the two thing or the major thing that was coming up for me was just encouraging, like if you're watching this video and you're not a therapist, yet you call it, I don't want to be limited only to people who
Mhm.
might have previously been working in the
Yeah.
therapy or mental health field. If you've been watching this video and you feel called to the goddess path or to priestessing, honor that call as well. Like we both happen to be therapists, I think,
Mhm.
because our souls came into this world and was like, well, what's the closest thing to priestess that we
Yeah.
can figure out? So we went in that direction at first. Um, but honor that and explore your own unique intuitive gifts and what you have to bring to this world. And if you're hearing that call of the goddess, like listen to her. She'll show up in many ways of your life. And if you feel like you are, you are.
Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I think some of the most powerful healers I met didn't do the traditional
Yeah,
therapy
me too.
route and had so much of that that wisdom. And so I think that's also a beautiful thing is that there's no one way to be a priestess. There's no one path to be a priestess.
Mhm.
And I think that even those similar themes of, that I talked about, even therapists kind of coming into priestess, I think that can show up whatever background we have of, can I own this part of myself? Can I
Mhm.
name this part? Can I step into this? And I think our journeys and our stories hopefully can be an inspiration that there's something very powerful calling to you, regardless of what your background is. And so starting to listen to that voice more, I think can be just such an important part of that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfect. Mhm.
Wonderful. So in our next video, we are going to do a much deeper dive into suggestions, strategies for anybody who feels called to that priestess path to work through all those things that can come up, imposter syndrome and those fears and the fears of judgment, and then also kind of some practical strategies of how you might be able to move into that goddess path, that priestess path, and listen to your own wisdom and trust in yourself and trust in this beautiful divine goddess energy that is calling to you and that you are feeling drawn to.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for joining us in this video. It has been a joy to connect with you, Liz, today and to deep dive into this. And I'd love to hear, I know we both would love to hear from anybody who's watching this who has any comments or questions, or would just love to connect. We really want to support, everybody who's on this path.
Mhm. And then I think our third video is going to be over on my channel.
Yes, on Liz's channel.
I just
Yes. Creating inner beauty. So check out that third video on Liz's channel, and we're going to have on the bottom of this video kind of a link over to Liz's channel so that you can check that out, and also check out all of Liz's other amazing offerings and our initial video as well. Yeah,
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.
wonderful. Thank you for joining us.